Hi, everyone. My name is Yogesh Chavda. I'm the founder of Y2S Consulting, and I'm also a faculty member at the University of South Carolina, where I teach classes in marketing. And alongside that, more recently, I've also become the director for the Center for Marketing Solutions. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend that you do, because you'll see me posting about a lot of topics, including AI in marketing. Today, I am very fortunate to have Ben Gafni here, who's the founder of McCoy, an amazing startup that I happened to come across recently, and I felt this is a conversation that we just have to have. And not why just have it between him and me? Why not just share it with everybody so that everyone can benefit from Ben's experience as well as his passion for his startup. So, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, people don't know who you are. So why don't we start with the very basics as to why don't you tell us who you are, what's your background, and we can go from there.
Sure. Well, born and raised here in LA. I've been in the tech space for over 20 years. I got my start at Google. I don't want to date myself, but it was 2003. So before it was a public company, it was a pretty small company back then. I tell people that I got my MBA at Google because it was just an extremely formative experience. I was very, very fortunate to be at an amazing company, and over 12 years, I obviously had quite a few different roles and different experiences, but it really added up to it formed the basis and foundation of my career, and I'm really grateful for the experience. Um, by the time I left, Google had over 100,000 people, so it was a very, very different company from the early days. And I decided that I really wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. So I ended up at a 40-person startup in LA
Mhm.
in a leadership role. Obviously very, very different. And I would say I learned probably as much in those 6 years as I did at Google.
Mhm.
Very different things, of course, right?
Yeah.
Working at a startup, a lot of skin in the game,
Mhm.
being scrappy, entrepreneurial, and reaching out to people who had no idea who we were. Right, was
Mhm.
a very different ball game than having the Google business card and being able to
Mhm.
get conversations started a lot easier.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, my brother Josh is actually the person who came up with the idea for McCoy. So Josh, and it's been really fun to work on a startup with my brother, which I
Mhm.
never expected either. But Josh had a very he's got a very interesting background himself. So he spent 5+ years at Tinder as a
Mhm.
software engineer. So
Mhm.
he was in the business of connecting people, helping people connect, discover and connect each other, but of
Mhm.
course in a dating sense.
Mhm.
And so he started thinking about ways in which he could apply some of that thinking to the professional networking space.
Mhm.
So he graduated from college and went into finance. So he was not an engineer,
Mhm.
and he was at Disney. He was doing finance. After a few years, he realized that what he actually wanted to do with his life was to build things.
Mhm.
And so he started teaching himself how to code, and he started building iPhone apps in his spare time. And it was revelatory for him, and he realized, okay, this is where I want to take my career. So he had his resume that was basically, I'm a finance person,
Mhm.
and he was trying to do this career transition, and it was really, really hard because his resume wasn't telling a forward looking story about what he wanted to do. It was basically framing him as he has already been.
Mhm.
So he started thinking about how to create this idea around a platform that could help people represent themselves in a way that professionally, in a way that a resume really can't.
Mhm.
So we started talking, and for me at a startup, a lot of my job was recruiting and hiring. So
Mhm.
at Google, people, I wasn't an anomaly staying there for 12 years. People would stick around for quite a while. So while we would hire, it wasn't like a constant pressing need. It was more occasional.
Hmm.
But as you know, at a startup, first off, we were growing, but also, retention is hard, right? People,
Hmm.
they leave, they turn over. So I was faced with the prospect of, hiring, and I was getting the recruiter would ping me at the end of the day, like, hey, Ben, you have another 30 resumes to go through in your queue.
Hmm.
And, for me, I found that whole process very, it's kind of soul sucking. I didn't feel like I was making really good decisions, like glancing at someone's resume. So when Josh, brought this idea for a different way to, to sort of speak to who you are as a professional, I
Hmm.
suddenly realized like I could use this product, as the recipient.
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I ended up, leaving my role at the startup and doing this full time. And it's been about a year and a half, and here we are today.
Wow. It's funny you say that because I remember, I was a PNG for many years. We talked about that before. I completely understand that when you're with a large organization, and especially a growing organization, you have all that infrastructure around you. So when you move from that world to the startup world where you have nothing, it's you or nothing basically. Totally different mindset, right? So how is that transition like for you? I'm just curious before you get into the whole conversation around McCoy. I just want to have that one piece. I want to
Yeah,
your side.
yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, everything at Google, especially towards the end, was
Mhm.
very codified. We had very distinct processes, and honestly, it was part of the reason why I was brought on at the startup. I didn't have startup experience. I had a little bit prior to Google, but nothing material, and that decade plus.
Yeah.
But I could bring systems, and I could bring a sense of structure to a
Mhm.
team that was a little bit on the young side. And
Mhm.
but of course we didn't have a lot of those tools, right? So
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of the role was kind of figuring out what do we need, what can we do in Google Docs, but or what do we need
Mhm.
a project management platform for, right? So
Yeah.
as opposed to sort of inheriting the way things are done at a big company,
Mhm.
having the chance to go into a smaller company and say, hey, here's my experience,
Mhm.
here's what I think I can take from that experience and apply here. And
Yeah.
also, here's the process of exploring all these other tools to sort of form the constellation of things, of infrastructure, as you put it,
Yeah.
to really do our job. And of course, we made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Sure.
We had to swap things out, and again, because not you can't necessarily apply everything from the past to
Mhm.
something completely different. But
Mhm.
it was very that trial and error process was very
Mhm.
educational.
And the reason why I brought that question up, because people might be wondering, why are you talking about that, Yogesh? The thing is that you said something earlier, which, I think is a pretty deep insight. Like you said, hey, your brother came up with an idea and you were like, hey, I need to use this too, right? And then you're putting your thinking cap on and saying, hey, how do I now really, make this come to life, right? So you're bringing that kind of context, that kind of understanding of how big businesses work and applying it to the situation here, right? Am I off, or is that somewhat
No,
accurate?
that's exactly right. It's about, yeah, taking that context and applying
Mhm.
it maybe in a different way. So it's for me, it was somewhat of a career pivot.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, yeah, I feel like my resume, my LinkedIn profile, I
Mhm.
feel proud of it, right? I
Yeah.
feel proud that, I'm proud of my career, but I still don't think that those documents would necessarily do a great job of explaining all of those little nuances.
Yes.
It shows a series of things that I've done, but it doesn't really show the connections, the interplay between the two, and how, yeah, I mean, I had to relearn a lot of things, actually, moving from a large company where I had that Google first mindset, and changing gears wasn't all that easy for me, and I learned a lot just in that process.
Of course. So let's talk about McCoy. So your brother came up with the idea. You joined him because you saw there's something here. So talk to me about your value proposition for McCoy. Talk to us about what is, what's the logic? What do people get? What do people do? What are you hoping uh, that would be transformational if people were to use your platform?
Yeah. So what we've discovered is that what people really want when they're networking or they're applying for a job is a chance to tell their story and to make a real connection with whoever's on the other side, a recruiter or
Mhm.
someone they're trying to network with. And again, our LinkedIn profile, again, LinkedIn is great, and we're big fans of LinkedIn. LinkedIn does a lot of things well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really put you front and center, and so we wanted to create you can think of it as a portfolio.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of different things, but it enables you to first introduce yourself and again, these are short video clips, so your introduction would be no more than a minute, but it provides some overall context, and then you can then choose from a series of prompts to put together a series of content clips that really tell your professional story. And then you can also add lots of different other types of evidence.
Mhm.
And then we use the word evidence a lot because, again, a resume has a bunch of bullet points, but it doesn't necessarily have evidence. And evidence can be, maybe it's a presentation that you gave, right, where you can, sort of narrate what your thought process was around that presentation.
Yeah.
It could be a photo of you at a team dinner, or giving a presentation at a conference. So it's all the documents and video clips, everything together, kind of in this online shareable portfolio. And you get a link that you can send out when you reach out,
Mhm.
or when you apply for a job. But the idea is to kind of go one step beyond what might be found in those text documents and really make you as a professional come to life.
Amazing. Because um, that's really hard to do through LinkedIn, and it's definitely very hard to do it on a 1 or 2 page resume, where there's so much pressure to be very selective what you put on there. I have students, for example, coming to me almost every day saying, "Hey, will you look at my resume? Tell me what I can do better." And I feel like I'm giving the same feedback every single time. Active verbs, passive verbs, achievements versus activities.
Yeah.
Formatting, etc. And I feel like I have to do that because obviously they're still learning their way through that process. But at times I always also wonder, like, for those who are actually recipients of this, how much time are they spending to really get to know that particular individual before they go on to the next resume? It becomes a challenge, right, as to how do you stand out.
Absolutely. A couple things there. First off, I think that the use case for college students or people that are, early stage career is a very strong one for us because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of college student, resumes. They
Yeah.
might not have the most impressive experience, but are they
Yeah.
really being hired, based on the things that they've already done?
Yeah.
Or more so because they're dynamic, they're coachable, they're excited. We
Hmm.
we forget about the importance of intent in these decisions, right? So
Yeah.
you have a list of people that have applied to your job. You don't always know who applied because they pressed the button, or they're applying to 100 other companies in your space, or with a similar role, similar role or job title, and
Yeah.
who really loves what you do and really wants to be there.
Yeah.
And if really anyone, but using your example of a college student, that isn't necessarily going to jump off of the other from the resume, right? So
Yeah.
we
Hmm.
want to give people a platform to tell in an affirmative, strong way, like, this is who I am, despite and in light of my past experience, but this is what I want to do,
Hmm.
and this is why I'm really excited to do X, Y, and Z. And we think it can be a difference maker. And I will say, yeah, the process for me of going through resume after resume, you're right. You have to decide. I mean, the recruiter or the hiring manager, they're making a decision. Do I bring this person into the process?
Yeah.
And what that really means is, am I going to spend 30 minutes on a call with them? And,
Yeah.
the last thing anyone wants on either side is for that 30 minutes, like 5 minutes in, you're like, oh, I don't know if this was a good use of anyone's time.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times you're making these snap judgments on people. Is that person worth the 30 minutes? And
Hmm.
you just don't have enough evidence. You don't have enough really to go on in that document I'll give you an example. In my last role, I would look at someone who has maybe they have 5 years of experience. I'm hiring an account manager,
Hmm.
and they have 5 years of experience in account management. Yes, but it's in healthcare. No,
Hmm.
because we were in e-commerce, so I have no real idea why did this person apply. They could be amazing, but it's hard for me to connect the dots for them, and so my default would be to move on. And even
Yeah.
though they might have had an amazing story, they might have all the real skills that are important
Hmm.
in terms of what is the types of people that end up being successful, but I might not ever realize that.
So do you feel that, as you're talking about, like, on your platform, you're having these prompts that you mentioned. Are you, I'm guessing you're being deliberative as to what would be the kinds of prompts that would be relevant for the hiring manager to see when that output is actually created, whether it's a presentation or a video or pictures or whatever the case may be. Is that the thinking, or give some
Yeah,
give some
yeah,
thoughts on?
and there's certainly an evolution as in terms of where the product is today and where we want it to go.
Yeah.
So today, you can kind of think of it as we want to have enough prompts so that you feel like you could gravitate towards things that
Mhm.
accentuate your strengths. So it's almost like when you're preparing for an interview, you have the list of questions that you wish the interviewer would ask you because you have a great answer for, right? It
Yeah.
could be about, we have a category of accomplishments, right? So
Mhm.
you want to make sure that you explain things that you feel, proud that you've done, that you're, excited about. There are, things around how you work style, right?
Mhm.
You might be work better in collaborative environments, and
Mhm.
we give people an opportunity to explain the types of places and team structures where they feel, they can feel the most
Mhm.
productive. Culture, things. So we do a lot of that where we're presenting all of these different options for people, and we have a lot of interesting tools to help guide people along to create tight scripts that they can
Mhm.
read off and engage with.
Mhm.
Eventually, what we want to do is have our AI, which we have AI incorporated in the app. There's a lot more we want to do with it.
Yeah.
We want to understand from you know almost like measuring success rate. So people that get positive reactions or jobs from in a certain field,
Yeah.
they tend to answer these prompts, these questions, and sort of have a feedback loop so that we can give, ultimately we'd love to give a certain percentage completion, or hey, what you have here is great, but you're missing these two other components that other people that have had success getting interviews and jobs in X role have done, right? so
Right.
so ultimately the recommendation engine will get smarter. We're not quite there yet.
Got it. But I think as I'm hearing you speak, right, I feel like there's a couple of things that could potentially become issues for the person creating all the content that they want to put on the platform, as well as for the person who's actually reviewing this stuff as well, right? So for me, one thing would be, well, I'm applying, I don't know which kind of company will even want to talk to me. So do I need to go create content that would be for the collaborative environment, for the individual contributor environment, for the place where where I have to be very savvy in navigating the office politics, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
I could see a person's thinking like that and saying, do I create content for all of them, or do I just pick a swim lane? So I'm curious to
Yeah.
hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is certainly valid. Our starting point and our mantra is really about authenticity. So,
Right.
be yourself.
Yeah.
I think that there are ways to answer questions that don't necessarily rule out, lots of different, obviously you don't want to be so opinionated or so focused in your responses that you're really narrowing the field.
Yeah.
One thing that we have built, so we have a pro product. It's a paid subscription, and what that
Yeah.
gets you is what we call targeted reels. So,
Hmm.
what you produce in McCoy, we call your McCoy reel, and that content, the McCoy reel content, is really designed to be. You should feel comfortable sharing that content wherever. So, it's sort of content that you create once, and in your mind you're thinking, if someone were to see this, it would be a good representation of who I am professionally.
Hmm.
What our pro product does is it allows you to actually create variants of that, or you can think of that as the foundation.
Hmm.
So content that would live on top of it for specific audiences, and those audiences could be, maybe you tend to apply to two different types of roles. We see
Yeah.
this a lot. So I
Hmm.
might apply to a sales roles, and I might apply to customer success roles.
Yeah.
And so my foundational content about my experience, that is the same, but you might want to add, you know, uh, to your point, for a role that is an individual contributor, you might not want to share content about your love for managing people.
Yeah.
So, or you might talk about your passion for customer success,
Mhm.
and make sure that you get a separate link that you
Yeah.
share for those roles, and not for the sales roles, where you would talk about something a little bit different. So
Yeah.
we do offer customization, but yeah, our belief is that for your main content,
Mhm.
all of that evidence that you collect, it really should be general enough to apply, in most situations.
So when you're having a link, right? I think this is one of those things where you almost have to educate everybody on where would you find the link? Is it on your resume? Like, today we have, your
Yeah.
name, your phone number, your email address, and maybe a LinkedIn link. Is it now
Yeah.
the case that you put the McCoy link instead of the LinkedIn link, or do you put both? What are your thoughts?
So
I'm
yeah,
just thinking
we
through
first off,
what would happen,
yeah,
right?
yeah, we would never, you should always share your LinkedIn link also, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that is something,
yeah,
there's a lot of credibility in terms of who you're connected with. We don't want to replace that, but most of the time, so for example, in a job application,
yeah,
there's almost always a personal URL field,
yes,
and or there's a free text box where it would say, add any other information that you want.
mhm,
And so we recommend, drop that link into the personal, URL field, and in your free text box,
mhm,
say, hey, if you want to hear from me directly, click here. I've put together this reel. And again, this is not a big commitment for the recruiter, right? They can look at you for 10 seconds.
yeah,
If they, hopefully they want to engage a little bit more, but this
yeah,
is, it's enticing them to basically, hey, if you don't want to sign up for the 30-minute phone screen with me, just
yeah,
click here. You can actually hear me introduce myself in a way that, you would probably ask me. It's probably the first question that you would ask is, want to walk me through your experience. You can get that in a bite-sized chunk.
mhm,
And then the other thing that we've seen people, yeah, so on LinkedIn, people are including their McCoy Reel link when they do just regular LinkedIn outreach. So when you back channel or connect with a hiring manager, it's the same story. You can send your message, but then you can drop your link in and say, hey, you can hear more about me
yeah,
here. And then, you know, we always recommend that people, if they can, jump into creator mode on LinkedIn, which allows you to put a link at the top of your profile. So a lot of people are saying, they're dropping in their link and saying, view my McCoy reel. Or
mhm,
we had one person show us, like, he put on his link. So it's the picture on LinkedIn, it's his title, and then
yeah.
it's the link, and it says, click here, I'm human. Right. I'm real, I'm a real person. And so we've figured out little ways to integrate the reel. Yeah, you can put it on your resume too. We have a QR code, we have
Yeah.
a link, but we're sort of weaving it into the existing process.
That sounds so exciting because I agree with you. Like, there is so much, like, you're looking through profiles, you get a sense of what they've done maybe, but you don't really know who they are. And the fact that you're bringing out this authentic side of people, it almost creates a new, like a new playing field in a way.
Totally. Yeah. And it's, you never know how you're going to connect with someone. It's funny.
Yeah.
We're working with someone who joined our team. She's an incredible, like, she's a 20-year career coach. She's an amazing person. And the way
Yeah.
that I reached out to her with my reel,
Yeah.
and I had one of my pieces of content is about sort of passions, right? So it's basically a personality question, and I
Yeah.
said that outside of work, I love to ski with my family, and she responded to me, and she said, I never respond to random people reaching out to me.
Yeah.
But my daughter put herself through college giving ski lessons. Like, we're a skiing family too, and I thought this was so cool that I was able to make this connection with you. So you
Yeah.
never know. It could be talking about a hobby,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's the things that really matter when you think about how is this person going to fit into my team.
Yeah.
It's often the things that slip through the cracks when you're looking at kind of the standard application or text documents.
I love that story because I can't tell you, I probably have like 5 or 10 of my own stories similar to yours where you're talking to somebody randomly and then something that just clicks with that person and you're like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. And we never realized it until we actually got into that conversation in the first place, right?
Totally.
So, and that's the part that I feel like sometimes gets lost in this process of recruiting and professional networking, where you know there's this pressure to do stuff and do it in a particular way, and in the unintended consequence of that is we're not able to show ourselves for who we really are, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's undeniable that there's some it's hard to change an existing process, right? And
Yeah.
you're right, people are just comfortable, like, hey, I need to find a job, I got to polish up my resume, and I'm going to send it out, and I'm going to probably do that at scale,
Yeah.
and hope that something in my past experience lands, and
Hmm.
then I get the opportunity to develop that rapport and really pitch myself in a way
Yeah.
that you might get a chance doing this if you bumped into someone in a serendipitous way.
Yeah.
But that is really hard. It's really hard to get kind of past that initial barrier.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to help people cut through that
Hmm.
noise and really stand out in an increasingly challenging job market.
Amazing. So I want to start picking your brain on a couple of things. So you brought up
Yeah.
AI as playing a pretty big role. You obviously, I heard you also say that there's a lot more you can be doing. So tell me, from a personal branding perspective, how are you seeing the role of AI transforming professional branding, and what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, AI is impacting the professional networking and recruiting space already,
Mhm.
and not in not such a positive way, right? So,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot. We've actually posted a lot about this. There's a lot of articles being written, but
Mhm.
over half of job seekers, I think it's 57% of job seekers, are using AI in the process,
Yeah.
mostly to polish up and embellish their resumes and their materials, their job applications. And
Yeah.
almost 50% of companies are using AI to screen, or to try to make sense of all the noise.
Yeah.
And so this is going to continue, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So the Wall Street Journal had an article that said, AI is fighting AI, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of this arms race where savvy job seekers, and again, more power to them, but they're taking job descriptions,
Hmm.
and then they're taking their resume, and they're pasting it into ChatGPT or whatnot, and they're customizing their bullets so that they can basically get around the screeners, right? So the AI screeners that a lot of companies are using, are picking up on certain keywords.
Hmm.
And so, AI is fighting AI. This arms race, and
Hmm.
in the process, we're somewhat losing the we're losing the authenticity that really matters, right? So,
Yeah.
people are going more and more applications are going to look good enough to kind of go deeper with, and that is going to present a problem for everyone, right? It's just going
Hmm.
to not necessarily lead to the best outcomes. So, we have AI built into McCoy. So today, when you go into a prompt, so we have this idea of building talking points. So you don't just jump in and record content. You go in and you create your talking points that you can work on over time, so that you can figure out, hey, if I'm answering this question, it's actually a little bit like interview prep in a sense. If
Yeah.
I get asked this question, what would my response be? And so some people can go in and type some bullet points, or they know what they want to say. But if you don't, we have a series of prompts. So we kind of boil down those prompt questions into sub questions, and then
Mm.
and it's easy for you to answer. And then our AI will process that into a script that you can read in under a minute. Of course, you can refine from there, but we make it easy to create this content and tell the story.
Mm.
So what we're trying to do is use AI smartly to help people share the stories and the motivations behind their career choices
Yeah.
in a way that makes them, it actually authenticates them, right? And so
Mm.
authentication is our buzzword right now because it is so important, and it's going to be increasingly important
Yeah.
to everyone in the process, that you can authenticate yourself and your experience in a way that I don't think your traditional methods will necessarily do all that well.
Understand. So, as we were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, okay, so you are as the use the job seeker, you are the one who's creating all this content. You're hoping that the talent acquisition person or somebody on the hiring side looks at it. What kind of responses or feedback are you getting from that side of the platform,
Yeah.
where the talent acquisition person is saying, hey, this is it helping them? Is it increasing the time they spend per candidate when they have all this? I'm just curious to hear.
Yeah.
What,
So the initial feedback has been really positive, right? So of
yeah,
course, right now we're new, so recruiters aren't getting a ton of McCoy reels when they put up a job posting, but
yeah,
we've heard from when they do receive one and they see it. Again, it doesn't guarantee that the person is going to get an interview out of that, right? But they at least feel like, hey, I'm making a better decision as to whether or not to bring that person in the process. And we've heard, again, it's somewhat anecdotal at this point, but we've heard
yeah,
very positive things that, hey, I actually jumped on an interview with someone who I would have rejected if I
mm,
only saw their resume, and the person connected with me in a way that we just would have missed each other. It would have been a misconnection.
yeah,
So we feel like we are onto something. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that we started with the job seeker and
yeah,
the networker, the people, the professionals.
yeah,
But if you think about it, companies, when they put together a job description, the job description suffers from a lot of the same
mhm,
limitations as a resume. It is just a series of text bullets.
yeah,
So we have the ability, it's new, and we haven't focused on it yet. We're in this like process of having focus groups, and we really want to build the right thing.
mhm,
But we're enabling companies that are hiring to create what we call job reels. So imagine the hiring manager of a team, that maybe it's a sales team. Hiring manager records a short intro to the role, and
mm,
then you could have actual peers of the person who would be joining the team as a new hire talking about different aspects. Maybe it's the culture, or maybe it's a day in the life.
yeah,
And we hear from candidates, what do you really want to know when you're applying?
yeah,
Yeah, sure, you could watch the sizzle reel, the YouTube video of what the company does, but what you really want to know is, who am I going to be working for? Who's my manager going to be?
yeah,
Who's the team? And these are the kinds of things that are revealed much later in the process. When you
yeah,
get to that in-person or Zoom interview where you get to see the team and you get to build that rapport.
yeah,
But for especially for organizations that they, like my past startup, where you might not have a brand that everyone knows, but you might be doing amazing work as a team.
mhm,
And so ultimately we want to have a two-sided marketplace where you go onto McCoy, you can create your own content, you share it. So we have a feed, and we haven't talked about that either, but
yeah,
we've built it's somewhat like a TikTok type feed, but it's, whereas TikTok is everything under the sun, our feed is strictly for professionals introducing themselves and talking about industry trends and topics that they're passionate about.
yeah.
You can also browse job reels and get to know teams and isolate on the types of roles that you're interested in. And so we're hoping that we can bring both sides together in a much more dynamic way than what exists today.
The couple of things you said, which I'm really excited about already. The fact that you're able to, have like a for you page kind of, experience where you can see different people talking about different things, and I like that a lot because for me, I'm always like trying to consume, new information on specific topic areas. And if you're doing this
Sure.
in a particular area, that makes my life so much easier than seeing all the other, shady stuff that's there on a TikTok or on an Instagram or whatever. Not that it's not good or bad, no judgment here, but it's just not relevant for me, kind of thing. But this makes
Totally.
it
It's
better.
all intermixed, and someone
Yeah,
might be producing a little bit of content about their career, but
yeah,
they're probably not going to share their TikTok link with a potential employer, right? That might be
exactly.
a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
So yes, we are a safe space
Yeah.
for professional only content. Yes.
So to that point, though, like some people are, naturally gifted when it comes to being able to talk into a camera. Here you are, you and I just doing this right now, and we're having a free flowing conversation, but doing it, with a script or something where you have to read something, I don't know about you. I know I certainly clam up a bit, and I feel very like, out of character when I'm doing that. Are you seeing any of that? Are you getting any feedback around that? And what would be your suggestions for people who would
Yeah.
see that as a potential barrier?
It's a great question. I would say first off, we have built McCoy for the novice, right? We did not want to build a product that you
Yeah,
have to feel like you're a social media influencer to use it properly.
yeah.
So we've built a lot of camera tools into the app, including the teleprompter. So
Oh wow.
again, yeah. So some people get very nervous when
Yeah,
to think about the idea of pressing record and just talking.
yeah.
But believe me, that we have people that don't, really go. They just speak off the cuff, and that they're comfortable with that.
Hmm.
But we help people again with it. Even with our AI, we guide them into creating a script, and then it plays, and you can try multiple takes. This is another thing that we get a lot of feedback around because
Yeah.
if you're asked a question in an interview, you might hang up afterwards and you're like, oh, I wish that I answered that question differently. The
Mhm.
beauty of McCoy is that you can do it 10 times, and you can start to get comfortable with how you come across. By the way, we have like virtual backgrounds. Like we try to make it as
Okay.
easy as possible to just press record and get something useful out of it.
Yeah.
Down the road, oh, and by the way, yeah, we've got people that are giving us feedback to say I've never been comfortable doing this, and I feel proud of what I was able to do with the product. So we
Yeah.
are getting feedback from those types of people that aren't like the social media or that frankly aren't Gen Z, right? So Gen Z, the younger people are very comfortable doing this.
Yeah.
People that are more seasoned, not necessarily, but that they're getting over the hump. Down the road, what we want to actually end up building is something that ends up being a lot more conversational. So there's really cool advancements in AI tech that can take conversations like this or
Yeah.
conversations with McCoy and basically clip the right sections in a way that
Mhm.
feels very very innovative. So, for example, in a future iteration of McCoy, McCoy might ping you to talk about the latest project that you completed,
Yeah.
and you might spend a couple of minutes kind of talking unfiltered to it, and it'll ultimately be able to clip your best 30 seconds,
Hmm.
and you would be able to choose from a variety of different sections and decide, okay, that's my best one. And so we can add more features down the road that'll make that whole process even smoother. But we're
Yeah.
getting good feedback that it's not insurmountable. It's a little uncomfortable to see yourself and hear yourself,
Yeah.
as I can attest to, but it's not insurmountable, and it can make a big difference.
Of course, of course. No, but the I think you're uh, literally putting into practice something that I learned a long time ago from a former manager of mine, where she said that, look, Yogesh, the more simpler you make it for your user, the more complex it is on us to make it simple for them. So if you
So true.
believe in really serving your customers or your consumers, take on that complexity and make it easy for them. And when you do that, you'll win every single time. And when she said that to me, and by the way, this was in the context of toothpaste, believe it or not.
Very
But
different, but
very
yes.
different, but it was actually very true. So even for a product like toothpaste, we were thinking about that kind of complexity. When it comes to healthiness, for your teeth and whitening and all that kind of stuff. But she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right, because you're seeing it right now through in technology, what you can do now. And
Totally.
it sounds like you're going down that path as well, by the sounds of it. So this is really amazing in that sense, you know. So,
Absolutely.
tell me, the other part that I was thinking about is that, okay, there's the part about, okay, you were talking about the job seeker. You talked about the job, people providing the jobs, and them also creating their videos for it too. Are there any concerns or risks that could come in? Because there's all this EEOC stuff out there in terms of things that you should avoid when you're hiring, and not, you shouldn't be asking certain kinds of questions, et cetera, et cetera. Are you factoring any of that kind of stuff into this process, or are you putting some sort of guardrails around that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's something that we definitely need to consider. I mean, I think our
Yeah,
what the prompts that we have are for people creating job reels are basic enough and vanilla enough that they wouldn't necessarily creep into areas of concern. But I think it's a fair point that we need to think about those issues as well. But
yeah,
we're just starting to scratch the surface, and in fact, we're spending a lot of time with recruiters and hiring managers
yeah,
because we basically soft launched this product on the recruiter side,
yeah,
and so it's available to use. But we're inviting people before you use it, come
yeah,
talk
yeah.
to us. We can make sure that we build a product that really works for everyone.
Right, right. Yeah. So with that said, you told me that, like, you hired somebody, and I think I know who you're referring to. I'm not 100% sure, but you've been tapping into some pretty amazing experts who are in the recruiting space and the coaching space when it comes to professional networking and job seeking, right? What kind of perspective have they been giving you? I'm just curious to hear.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it is a really, really tough job market right now, and
Yeah,
in fact, yeah, we've been having conversations with these recruiters who are saying, you know, actually, we had one a couple weeks ago. She said, I put up a job post and I got over 1,000 applicants in 48 hours and I had to take it down. And
wow,
then she, painstakingly tried to go through all these submissions. But, it's, it is hard, she, I know we're talking about the same person, but she really preaches the importance of for each person to figure out their unique value add.
right.
It's this term that she's coined, and
Yeah,
framing your outreach in this very, very crowded environment where, and again, not every industry is this way. I think I tend to think maybe first about the tech
yeah,
space, white collar. It's
yeah,
really, really hard, and there's just so much competition
yeah.
that really anchoring on what you uniquely can bring to the table,
Hmm.
and then creating a narrative around that, around your impact, is really what is needed because there's so much noise out there, and it's so
Hmm.
challenging right now that taking that extra time. And again, this is not something that comes natural to a lot of people to really have these reflections. I think what a lot of people will do when they're in a rut, that maybe they're searching for the job, that job search is taking longer than they ever imagined, and we're hearing
Yeah,
a lot of people are in that situation.
yeah,
They feel like I just got to go and refine my resume for a 10th time, right? and
yeah,
and and that in of itself can be really frustrating because it feels like,
yeah,
well, what else can I do? How many other word choices can I sub out here to try to get through? And
yeah,
so we talk a lot about the way that you frame your experience and the way that you connect with people, sometimes through back channels, right? And
hmm,
not trying to hammer the front door, but really taking the time to set up how you can deliver value and find the right person to try to get that message to. But yeah,
yeah.
it's a really, really tough environment right now.
Yeah, and I think this is where, the fact that you're offering this solution where people can show their authenticity, they can show themselves in a multifaceted way, I think just gives them that competitive edge in a way, right? And I'm actually curious to see if there are, as you start getting success stories of people coming through the front door as opposed to coming through the back door because of McCoy. I'm just wondering if that's even going to happen,
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have a vision, right? So when, again, we're building this two-sided marketplace, so we're going to have, jobs, we're going to have people, and then
Yeah.
we have a feed, right? So
Yeah.
what's interesting, again, this is going to be an evolution, and it's not something that we're saying, hey, the whole process has to shift over to McCoy. But what's
Yeah.
really cool is that when you put up a job reel, you can have people in McCoy what's called express interest. And so
Mhm.
they express interest by sending you their reel, and they might even add a cover, video, basically saying, hey, Joe, I saw your job reel. Your position is exactly, it's fits me to a T, and this is why. And
Mhm.
so, again, maybe in the first, period, the first few years, the
Yeah.
majority of people might still, send their resume out to 100 different places and then feel that that's sufficient. But
Yeah.
we're giving people another way to engage, right?
Mhm.
The companies are getting content. They're able to share this content in their job posts, right? They can share it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But for the people that want to engage in this way,
Yeah.
they can express interest and they can kind of handle that back and forth. There's a chat feature in McCoy. So you could theoretically, down the road, you could apply to a job with your McCoy reel, with this custom content, set up the interview and kind of have the whole process run its course without, kind of going back to the old way of doing things. So
Mhm.
that's our vision. We started with creating a way for people to document their experience and send that out in the existing process.
Yeah.
So we're not really worried about the chicken and the egg problem, because
Mhm.
we're letting people kind of, we've built an on ramp so that they can use it in the existing world. And then we're going to companies and saying, hey, you should do the same. You should build this content, because when you share it, people will know more about your roles and they'll get excited to apply. And then ultimately, we're going to have a place for people to do all of that, right? Right in the app.
I think that's so phenomenal because, as you're describing it, I could see this actually applying even for like senior executive level people who actually are graded, or the decision making it happens in the context of, you know what's your influencing strategy, and how good are you at doing that, and can you lead an organization, and if you show all those things and be able to highlight them through video and other kind of content, I think that
Yeah.
just makes the executives resume a lot more powerful, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah. There's one use case that we've thought a lot about, and it's, you know, and I've this is like from personal experience too.
Yeah,
So, a new job, we have to hire for this new role, and maybe it's a senior executive role, or maybe it's a junior role. You
yeah,
have this conversation with the recruiter who's going to source for that role, right? And they take the basic information: how many years of experience, what's the title,
yeah,
and then, of course, you've got the job, the responsibilities. Then the question is, the recruiter might say, hey, when you think about the people on your team that have
mhm,
been successful in this role, what
mhm,
were they like? What were their attributes like? And that, it's funny for me, I've had people on my team that they didn't work in the exact role
mhm,
where they were successful on my team, but they had foundational components to their personality, the way they thought,
mhm,
that really would not have come through if you just looked at those kind of classic signals. Oh, this person has 10 years of experience doing X, Y, and Z. It was really more like, hey, is this the person that was successful? She was really entrepreneurial.
mhm.
She actually worked at a startup before. She wasn't doing this role, but she had to wear a ton of hats, and that
Yeah,
that was a predictor of success.
yeah,
So ultimately, what will be very interesting down the road for us is, we feel like when people talk to McCoy, we're going to know more about them, whether it's them as a professional or the role,
mhm,
than anywhere else, right? We're going to know more. And again, people will upload in McCoy, you can upload your resume, right? So we're going to have all that data and have you're going to have your kind of classic bullets,
yeah,
but we're also going to have all of the surrounding conversational stuff about your preferences, how you think, and also what the job is looking for. And so we have a vision for what we call an always on search experience for both parties. We'll be able to surface people that will be a great fit, or roles that would be a great fit for your career, without you even conducting the Boolean, title based search. And
wow,
that is when it really gets exciting, because we'll be able to anticipate your needs. Like, hey, this person, you might not be hiring yet, but this person fits all of your attributes for what makes a successful,
Mhm.
marketing person on your team, you should at least start a dialogue with that person. So it gets really fun to think about all the different things we can do as we build up this knowledge base of who people are and what, why they're successful at work.
And that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because this is what you just said right now, to me, is the shift that's about to happen because of what you're doing right now. And if the more people who start engaging with your organization and your platform, I think can help lead that shift. And I think that'll be actually I would say a more positive experience for everybody, because right now we all know that the experience sucks when you're
It's
looking
just
for a
pain
job.
on every side.
It's pain on
It's
every
pain
side.
if you're, yeah, if you're looking for a job, it's pain. If you're hiring, it's pain. It's just
Exactly,
not,
exactly.
you have to cut through a lot of noise. And if you bring a certain number of people into the process, are you that confident that those were the right people? And it's scary to think about the really the best fit folks might, not necessarily even make it into that process. You might not even, ever realize that.
Exactly. So just a couple of final thoughts. So if you were to give, your 2 cents of advice for people who are in the job market right now, and with everything you talked about McCoy, and what would you suggest to them to do?
Yeah. So we love talking about what we think of McCoy as your professional impact narrative, and it's really documenting and showcasing your skills in a way that, again, your traditional documents won't or can't.
Yeah.
I will say, probably should have mentioned this, that we are new and we are only on iOS right now. So there are people out there that have Android. They can't. Anyone can view a McCoy reel in a web browser, but you can't actually download the app
Mhm.
unless you have an iPhone. So there are other ways to create an impact narrative. You can create a portfolio. You can do it on Loom. There are ways to get around it. Of course, we would argue that the way that we've
Yeah.
structured our information, if you do have an iPhone, we recommend it. But
Mhm.
just thinking about your evidence, thinking about documenting and showcasing your accomplishments in a way that is conversational. That and one thing we recommend to everyone, and it's a little bit of a mindset shift, is that don't wait until you're ready to kick off a job search to start
Mhm.
aggregating and thinking about your evidence and your experience. I think a lot of us fall into the trap of, I'm working, I don't really keep a regular record of all of the wins. And if you think about someone's LinkedIn profile, a lot of times they don't update it
Yeah.
unless they get a promotion or they switch jobs, right?
Yeah.
So we think of McCoy as being something that evolves with you, that's more dynamic, and you should be documenting all the great things that you're doing at work along the way, so that when it comes time to enter the job market, you're really prepared with a bunch of evidence and stories and context to show, that you're ready to take on that next role. So, I think just amassing, whether or not you did that proactively, just
Yeah.
thinking about evidence, especially in a world in which authentication is so important, and building up that story, is really kind of the main advice that I would give.
So if people wanted to, like say, hey, you convinced me, I want to try McCoy, how would they find you?
Very easy. So go to the App Store and search for McCoy, or McCoy Job App, and it'll show up, and you download it, and you're off to the races. So we're also, and we can leave my contact information in the show notes, but
Yeah.
we are very willing to help people with any questions, or even people will send us their reels and say, "Is this good?"
Yeah.
And we're early enough, and we just love helping people. So
Yeah.
you know if you feel like you want someone to give you feedback, again, of course, a lot of people are taking their content, and sharing it with family and friends and trusted colleagues and whatnot, but we're happy to help advise as well, and say, hey, look, you did X, Y, and Z well, but hey, you might have forgotten to do this, right? Or maybe you haven't given enough concrete examples, or whatever our feedback might be. We're really, really happy to help. But yeah, you can find it on the App Store, and yeah, get going right away.
Amazing, amazing. Listen, Ben, this has been phenomenal. I love what you're doing. I think it's going to be a big game changer. And as Ben offered, connect with him. He's obviously on LinkedIn, and I would highly encourage everyone to consider trying this approach, because we've been trying all these old, the traditional approaches, and we all know where it's getting us right now, right? So why not try something new, right? So for me, that was the really insightful piece of this entire conversation, that you're offering us a different pathway forward. And I think, as whether you're on the talent acquisition side or whether you're on the job hunting side, both of you, both groups can benefit in this situation. So,
Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Ben, for today. I really really appreciate it. Um, I was going to just basically end by saying that we have our next show coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to be having Teresa Brazen, who's an executive coach, talking about her work that she's doing in coaching with leaders in organizations, and how they're engaging her in terms of trying to figure out how do we even use AI across the organization. So that's going to be a really different conversation coming from an executive coaching perspective. So I hope you can join us then. Thanks everyone for listening. See you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Thanks.